Hello, welcome back to Astro Mary, Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. I'm a professional astrologer and the author of 15 plus books on astrology. And there's a new one coming out very soon that's called The Astrology of Lovers, How Astrology Can Help You Love Better. And it's all getting very exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. Excuse me for blowing my nose. Now, this week we're learning about Jupiter, and it's an absolutely lovely planet. Really enjoy learning about Jupiter. You know, when you start to read up on it and you read stuff about it, really get into it, because it's a planet that it really helps you to understand, because life can be quite bleak, but once you have a grasp of your Jupiter, where it's located, what sign it's in, blah 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 blah, you'll have access to that which makes you happy. Now, we did previously, we did Mercury, Venus and Mars, and any of those planets are going to particularly make you feel chirpy, but Jupiter will. And its opposite planet, the one that does the opposite of what Jupiter's up to, is Saturn, which we'll be learning about next week. But this week we're going to do Jupiter, and Jupiter is fun and fab. Now, at the moment, we're February, and it's around about the 19th. It is the 19th, in fact, today, Sunday the 19th of February. And Jupiter is pretty much visible in the night sky. When you look up at the sky, if you see a really bright thing in the distance, that is Jupiter, and it is absolutely visible with the naked eye. Now, if you've got binoculars and you look at it, you might see a few of the rings around it, and it's got some satellites going around it, or whatever they're called, moons, Jupiter moons. But it is actually visible with in the naked eye. You can see it, and with ordinary magnification, magnifying glasses, you can see the little blobby bits that are around it, and it's a fab planet to look at. I love looking at Jupiter every year. I get out there, get excited. Oh, let's look at Jupiter. Now, in astrology, we classify Jupiter from two things. One, what it's like in reality. So, and don't forget, all the planets we're discussing at the moment, right up until we get to Saturn, they were, I guess I can't say they were discovered, but they were observed by the original Babylonians, which is 2,000 plus years ago. So Jupiter has always been visible to the naked eye. It has always been taken into consideration for all sorts of astrologers in whatever way, you know, whatever country that might be in, because it's a visible planet. And in reality, not that astrology isn't reality, but it's different to that, but the planet itself, in astronomical terms, it's the biggest one in our solar system. It's a biggie. It's hundreds of millions of times bigger than us here on Earth, and it's I think it's correct, yes, it's a gas giant. So it basically just burns, dum 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 dum. So I don't think you can land on it. We had some missions that have gone out to Jupiter, probably, but you might get burnt up, I believe. I can't remember, don't quote me on that, but it is a gas giant. So the basis of the planet is gas, whilst us on Earth, we are our planet is made of Earth, but our core is, as you know, is lava. Did you know that? The core of the Earth is lava. Amazing. Whilst the Sun is just another big gas giant burning in space. But Jupiter is a gas giant, and also because it's so flipping big, what we talk about it in astrology, if we're talking about someone's Jupiter, it's things that make things bigger. So it's the things that are going to magnify stuff, so increase it. So we tend to think of Jupiter as being a pretty much a positive planet. It's the planet that is going to make you feel happy and fluffy, and it governs things like long distance travel, further education and philosophy. Don't ask me why those things were picked to represent Jupiter, but actually I quite like that. I think it does suit the way the planet is. And each sign of the zodiac, I'm sure I've discussed this before, but each sign of the zodiac has got a planet that looks after it, and the planet that looks after Jupiter, the sign that looks after Jupiter, the one that's got, the affinity, is Sagittarius. And this week we're going to be discussing again, hello Mark, we're chatting about your chart again, because he has his Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, he's born in 1983, so if you were born in 1983, your Jupiter will also be in the sign of Sagittarius. So we say that his planet is in its natural home, yeah? So his planet Jupiter is in the sign of Sagittarius, and it loves being in that sign. He's also got Uranus in the sign of Sagittarius, that's fine. And I don't think his Jupiter is retrograde. Let me just double check, because Jupiter does go retrograde. I mean, at this precise moment in time, no, it's not retrograde. At this precise moment in time, Jupiter is retrograde. Oh my lord, it's in the sign of Libra at the minute, and it's going to be retrograde right up until something like June the 10th. So if you've got a Sagittarius ascendant, or you've got Moon in Sagittarius, or you've got your Jupiter in some sort of funny place in your chart, you might find, and if you're a Libra, because it's in the sign of Libra at the moment, you might find things are unravelling. It's like, oh, have I got to redo this? Because when a planet goes retrograde, you have to redo it. Whatever it is you're doing, you need to redo it, rethink it. I'm doing a re-edit. So, Jupiter, biggest planet in our solar system, bar the sun, because the sun obviously is bigger. I think that's right, don't quote me. It's a big one. It's a gas giant. It makes things larger. It's visible from the Earth, and astrologically we classify it as the planet that, if it's near to another planet, it's going to magnify it, make it bigger. My son, for instance, has his sun sign in Libra and has his Jupiter in Libra. Jupiter's in Libra at the moment. So he doesn't just do stuff, he overdoes it and he exaggerates. Naughty boy. So if your Jupiter's next to your sun sign, then you might have a capacity or an inclination to not just do stuff, but to overdo it. And now, the sign that your Jupiter in will give us an idea about what it is that you feel positive about, because we can definitely say that Jupiter is about positive things, and Saturn, which we'll be covering next week, is about the negative things. So find out the sign that your Jupiter's in. Is your Jupiter happy in the sign that's in? Now, I've got my Jupiter and my Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, so my Saturn's perfectly happy being in the sign of Capricorn, because those two things got an affinity, but my Jupiter isn't. Jupiter hates being in the sign of Capricorn. It's like, I want to be optimistic, but I gotta be realistic. So in my case, my issue is optimism, but realistic optimism. So I'm not just going to go, hey, I'm feeling really fine, if I'm not. I might, just to make myself feel better, because my Leo ascendant. In Mark's chart, because his Jupiter is in the sign of Sagittarius, he's going to be permanently blessed with the ability to feel at one and at peace with optimistic viewpoints. Now, admittedly, he does have a Virgo ascendant, so that could give him the possibility of occasionally tackling things in a slightly more anxious way, because Virgo is the sign of anxiety. And his Jupiter is located in the 3rd house. Now, we're not doing houses at the moment. We haven't got to houses. That's in a future lesson. But I will just tell you that because his Jupiter is in the 3rd house, the 3rd section of the chart, the 3rd section of the chart is to do with short distance travel, siblings, certain amount of learning, change, communication. So if your Jupiter's in your 3rd house, you're going to be a good communicator. Now, I do know that because I watched a lovely video of our Mark, and he was talking about bees, because that's what he does. He keeps bees and makes honey and stuff, and he was talking about the whole beekeeping thing. It was wildly interesting. And so you have to remember, though, that if your Jupiter is in the sign of Sagittarius, you're going to have viewpoints on things, but you might sort of think that your viewpoint is the only one. But there's more than one viewpoint. So you have to be wary of, if your Jupiter is in Sagittarius, not getting, what's the word I look for? Single-minded about things, just recognising that there are other people, other people's viewpoints. So your Jupiter also tells us your attitude towards things that are from another culture or country. So have you got an open attitude towards other countries, in Mark's case, yes, he will. Or might you have a closed attitude? So say, for instance, your Jupiter's in the sign of Taurus. Jupiter and Taurus don't really get on. You might be a bit, single-minded about things. And Jupiter spends a whole year in each sign of the zodiac. So interestingly, it takes 12 years to go through all the signs of the zodiac and back again. And as I say, at the moment it's in the sign of Libra. And so you need to get to the age of 12 before you'll have what we call your Jupiter return. So find your chart, find the sign that your Jupiter's in, and go back and forwards in time to years of age that are divisible by 12, and see where your Jupiter is and what it's up to, and whether or not those were particularly positive years. So if you think about, you have to get to 12 before you get to big school, and normally the first year of big school is like nightmare. I just can't cope. It's just everybody hates me. And then after you've been there for a year, like, you're not the first year of the secondary school, so you've sort of gone up a bit. When you get to 24, most people are sort of dating, possibly thinking about maybe getting married. When you get to 36, hopefully you've had most of your kids and your career's chugging along. 48 is your fourth Jupiter return, so you might be thinking about things like, I'm at the peak of my life, maybe. When you get to 60, so this is your fifth Jupiter return, you might be thinking about retirement, hopefully. And I can't tell you the amount of people that I know that have got to 60. I'm only 57, so I have got a number of friends that are 60, and they're forever jumping on aeroplanes and dashing off to other countries. Like, no, I can't afford it. So people that get to 60, maybe it's a Western thing, do tend to want to travel more, possibly, than they did when they were working. So find your Jupiter, have a look at your chart. It's a 12-year cycle, yeah? So think about 12, 24, 36, 48, 60. Is that right? 48, 12 is 60. Let me just calculate that. I don't want to be... Yes, it is. Maths not my strong subject. So think about the cycle of those 12 years, whether or not they've been good or bad for you, because that's how you relate to the positive things in your life. It's your attitude towards positivity. So I hope you've enjoyed this teeny little chat about Jupiter, but it's a fabulous flipping planet. It really, really is. If you look at your chart at the moment and you click on the bit on astro.com where it says transits, that'll let you know where Jupiter is today, and it's in the sign of Libra. So in Mark's case, Jupiter is in his sun sign, so he will be, hopefully this year, because it lasts until October, be feeling reasonably optimistic about things. So any Librans out there, hello! Jupiter is transiting your sign. You are having fun, apart from at this particular moment in time, because it's going retrograde. You might have to redo a few things. But find the sign that your Jupiter's in. We will talk about aspects in a later lesson, the relationship between the planets in your chart with the other planets in your chart. But in Mark's case, because he's got pretty much a cluster chart, all his planets are squished together, and he has his Uranus right next door to his Jupiter, and Uranus is the planet of freedom. So we could sort of translate Uranus conjunct Jupiter in the sign of Sagittarius as that wanting to have the freedom to have his own attitude towards his beliefs and his philosophies, etc., and to be able to communicate those, because it's in his third house. So we'll chat again next week. Next week we're going to be talking about Saturn. Oh, and just to let you know, the symbol for Jupiter looks like the number 4. It must be the easiest blinking, apart from the sun, because that's just a circle, and the moon, which looks like the moon. But the symbol for Jupiter is a pretty easy one to recognise. That's what makes it so much easier. And it's basically looks like the number 4. So if you see a number 4 in your chart, that is the symbol for Jupiter, and that's what we've been discussing today. So do have a fab week, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you. Bye bye now.